Where are you going, city boy?
We'll find it.
It ain't nothing but the biggest river in the state.
These are the men. Nothing very unusual about them. Suburban guys like you or your neighbor. Nothing very unusual about them until they decided to spend one weekend canoeing down the Cohulawasi River. Ed Gentry. He runs an art service. Wife Martha has a boy, Dean. Lewis Medlock has real estate interests. Talks about resettling in New Zealand or Uruguay. Drew Ballinger. He's sales supervisor for a soft drink company. Bobby Tripp, bachelor, insurance and mutual funds.
Where you going?
All right, I'm looking.
These are the men who decided not to play golf that weekend. Instead, they sought the river.
Would you like to check it out?
You look around you, Lewis. He could be out there anywhere watching us right now. We ain't gonna be so hard to follow dragging a corpse.
Lewis, I'm gonna pull off to the side. There's something wrong.
No, go on!
What is it? Don't stop, man!
No, hang on to the plan.
No!
John Boorman's film of James Dickey's explosive best-selling novel.
That is some preview.
I did not.
I feel like they did two conceptual things there, and they didn't work very well together. It was first they wanted to seem like some kind of documentary where, like, you know, you're actually following them into the woods. And then the second thing is that, like, you know, trying to like freak you out with the and I feel like those two things kind of are jarring to put together because one of them is like a realistic documentary style trailer, and the other one is like, I don't know, like an Alfred Hitchcock almost like end of trailer thing.
It's odd, but I did appreciate that the banjo playing did indeed intensify as the scenes got more.
Just like the meme.
Exactly.
All right, well, this is Movie Night Extravaganza. We are here hanging out. Audrey just ran in, and apparently, you can see her behind me. Yeah, I'm Forrest Miller, hanging out here. Unfortunate damn employee is my name that I'm going with today. I feel bad for whatever power representative person came in after that to set the dam up. I am joined as always by J. Andrew World, who did not pick a name today, an extra name.
Yeah, I kind of felt weird because I was bullied by a bunch of kids that sound just like the kids' names in this movie while I was living in Georgia. So I got a little nervous, and I'm just going to be like, no, they're going to track me down. All these years later, they're going to track me down. So I thought I'd go with just classic Coke.
You got bullied by John Voight and
Burt Reynolds?
Ronnie Cox.
Yeah, no. I was friends with Ronnie Cox. I got bullied by Burt Reynolds.
Oh, okay. He does seem like the type.
Especially in that outfit. Yeah.
Also joined by Protonic Reversals and Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. Conan, Canoe Life, Neutron over there.
That's right. Canoe or die. That's what I say. I say it all the time. Stoked to be talking about this one. This is my first watch of this as an adult, and I feel like I got more out of it. So I'm excited to discuss this film, which I think is very interesting in a number of ways. And I'm very excited to have Mark on as well.
And it's also the first time you said canoe or die where it actually made sense in context.
Exactly. I say it all the time, but my time has arrived, folks.
Yes.
All right. Also joined by Kristina Oakes. I'm Kristina on Twitch, who gets her big episode on Friday when we have Keffels on to talk about the Suicide Squad. That should be an interesting adventure.
Yeah. It's quite the dichotomy.
Yeah.
I mean, it just makes sense. All these different Twitch streamers getting together to save the world from Western imperialism. Let's go.
Save it for Friday.
And we are joined by Mark Borchert, indie director, music video director. I'll let you.
Thank you. I was getting to that. So exactly what he described, and we're obviously the show runs for quite a bit of time, so we don't have to compress anything because we have all the time to expand.
Just like the river. Once they added, the water to it and it drowned out the city, we too can expand our lake of discourse into this conversation.
We're the lake effect of movie shows. Yes.
I think it's interesting after watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre a few months ago, right? This movie feels like it was the kind of lead up to that concept. Obviously there was only kind of two very creepy rednecks in this, and that were kind of in the woods and pretty evil, I guess. But it feels like that kind of concept where it's almost like you kick the hornet's nest, right? Where everyone says, "Don't fuck with that river, stay away from the river," and they're like, "No, we're still gonna go to the river. It's a river. What's gonna happen?" It feels like that kind of conceptual plot built out to something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 years later.
Yeah, that's a good. That's good. That you brought that up in a sense. I mean, that's a very obviously a very basic motif. To stay away from something because something harmful is going to happen. But of course, they indulge it anyway. Thereby, the film exists and so on and so forth. But yeah, they do have the same feel. Obviously, Deliverance was a Hollywood film shot on 35. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was shot on 16, but they have that very kind of earthen feel to it nonetheless, where you are part of the environment immediately. You don't have a choice. You're in the landscape and you're not getting out of it. So
yeah, and the nature kind of itself almost empowers the the unspeakable evil and the hidden nature, I guess, of the the people within it in both kind of contexts, right? Their land, setting foot on their land is kind of it's almost like you fired the first shot without knowing it, and that takes you back to almost a very it's a very primal territorial sense of humanity, I think.
Well, and it's ascribed to the South, but really think of the Appalachians, think of any place where you have folks where it's ancestral homes, Hatfields and McCoys, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. It's often a trope now, not to just utilize that term in films, to have the backwoods hick that they want you to get off their land. But I mean that is very real, and historically there's good reason for it, whether it's regional internecine conflicts or just the fact that when the government shows up, it's not usually for anything good for them, you know, like
Yeah.
there's good. And then also maybe they're just maniacs and or have chainsaws with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But, you know, like I think it's a good way of looking at it. Be like, think of like the gypsy characters, right? They're always used as the harbingers in some case, or in some cases the instigators for, you know, whatever malevolent presence is going on. Just, you know, worst PR in the past like few hundred years. But that said, they have their story and they have their rationale as to like why maybe they adopted certain character traits culturally to keep people away from them and keep them poking in their business. So
yeah, and I've also like you know the with the turn of the century, leading up to this movie, there was a lot of places in the South, in particular, where they actually did flood out cities, which was a big thing. And so, you know, this was part of the cultural heritage. I remember when my uncle the fisherman came down to visit us in Georgia. He got a houseboat that he rented, and we went out on one of the man-made lakes, and he just laughed at people there because, you know, he's a big ocean fisherman, and he's out on this little man-made lake on a little houseboat with his family.
Yeah, well, we forget that, you know, rural electrification, right, is something that only happened a few decades ago. Like, you know, 80 years ago, like FDR was president when, you know, the biggest rural electrification projects happened during the New Deal. So, like, you know, property was getting confiscated all the time. People were coming in there. They were flooding entire like communities. They were obviously building roads leading up to those power places. Like the entire infrastructure was being built and changed. And I think that, you know, in the 70s with like the conservation movement, right? Like when this movie kind of is the backdrop of that, like people started to realize that we've changed the landscape so much that like it's almost like the landscape is going to come back. And we talked about that with Blair Witch Project too. Like, you know, it's almost like reclaim, like nature is going to reclaim, you know, the stuff back from the humans. And I think in this movie, the rural populations kind of represent that.
Indeed.
Mark, I think you read the book, right? Is that what you said when we were talking earlier?
The book came out in '70. I read the book. What you also want to do is they published actually James Dickey's screenplay, and it's like about, I don't know, 160 some pages. And actually I had the pleasure of finding the book on the shelf again and picked it up, read the screenplay for the second time. And the screenplay that Dickey wrote is not in conventional form with scene breaks or anything like that. And he puts his, being not a director, he puts his directorial hand in it deeply as the camera movements, all of that stuff, and immense detail. And when they got Dickey's script, anyone in their right mind said, "Hey, you know what? We got to hire some motherfucker to write a script, dude, because this is crazy." You know, transcribing the novel, intimate detail on how he cinematically wants to see it done, which is none of his business as a screenwriter. So, you know, somebody must have took that thing and said, "Man, we gotta do something with this because we have to hand this out to the crew. We have to have scene breakdowns and all that." And what he handed us just ain't going to make it. It is in a way that screenplay is a work of art because, you know, it's unusable. It's very deep. It's very dense. Alludes to mysteries that cannot be explored by the filmmaking team. All of that stuff. So it is just a. And then, you know, they throw half of the stuff he wrote out had nothing to do. It never became a part of the film and so on and so forth. So, yeah, reading that screenplay and the novels is a pure delight because he has some intentions about ambiguity and mystery that are actually hinted at in the film when you see the four guys show up at the Grinders brothers to try to hire them to get the canoes down. You know, there's some mysterious movement in the shadows that doesn't have any narrative quality to it as for revealing anything about character or moving the narrative along, but it's just a kind of maybe an homage, that ambiguity that definitely had no definition in the novel, in the screenplay. There's maybe a little nod to that. Maybe I'm hallucinating, I don't know, but I kind of remember that the darkness and the Grinders thing and whatever. So yeah, I would definitely it's do what you want. But I mean, if you're so interested, yeah, the novel and both the screenplay are infinitely rewarding.
And they used a lot of the dialogue directly from the novel for the film.
Yeah, I think that there's well, it cuts both ways. A lot of that dialogue is completely unfilmable. A lot of that dialogue, especially in the screenplay, is completely laughable. That we're not having anybody say this. It's really bad. It's really clunky. They threw a lot of it out, so a lot of things did not directly translate from the source into the ultimate film because it just god awful dialogue. I mean, there's some remnants of it, like with anyone who writes, but for the most part, that dialogue in the screenplay was god awful, and they didn't use it.
And John Boorman, it looks like, was the director of Excalibur. Was the guy who rewrote the
Excalibur
script.
and Zardos.
Yes, which are two great films. But
very different
Excalibur, I love because if you watch the director's commentaries, he's like, "Oh yes, I have Excalibur hanging on my wall, and it's right next to the Holy Grail, actually."
Yeah, so I have a clip of Ned Beatty and John Boorman talking about this the process of getting the movie together, and there's actually more stuff than I figured that there would be with clips that are out there of the process of making it.
The guy and the writer, I forget his name right now, but he was pretty kind of like a thorn in Boorman's side too, is my understanding. So I'm eager to see what these clips that's right. Mark said it earlier, but I'm excited to see what these clips look like because it sounds like it was a bit contentious.
Yeah, I mean, I have two for the after party where they go more into the relationship between them, I think.
Cool.
But I don't know why Michael Palin's in this, by the way.
Had a party, drunk a lot. As usual, I couldn't sleep, and Deliverance was the film that was on. I started watching it, and I fell into a half sort of stupor, I suppose, and then kept waking up and seeing more of this. So the film and my dreams are sort of all intertwined. And once you get Deliverance stuck in your dream system, it's truly frightening.
Hey, what happens if we flip this thing over?
Now that you got that up, hang on to your paddle. And if you hit any rocks, don't hit them with your head.
This hazardous journey that they take, which becomes very primal, it seemed to me to be a perfect kind of metaphor for what's happening between modern urban man and the landscape.
It's not a subject that we are easily enthralled with. It took a poet and a really tough filmmaker to take us there the first time.
You done taken a wrong turn. See, the Sherry River don't go nowhere near Antrim.
The mountain men who come and rape them, or rape one of them, come out of the woods. I shot it in such a way that you see these men, they seem to emerge out of the trees. So they're like the malevolent spirit of the forest.
No. Hey, boy. No. You look just like a hog. No, don't. You look just like a hog. Come here, Piggy. No. Come here, Piggy. No. Piggy. Come on.
And I had a robust relationship with censors about this issue because I argued that they were all horrified. This is the first time anything this had ever been seen on film, and I argued that we'd seen a lot of women raped, and what was the difference?
I'm really proud of it because I think it scared the hell out of people, which in essence was what it was meant to do. It was meant to be frightening, and I think it was.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's kind of one of the observations I took away from it watching it as an adult is I think one of the reasons why everyone is horrified by that scene is because it's a depiction of rape, but a guy doing it to another guy. And you just don't see that in movies.
Yeah. Andy, you're muted. But yeah, and I mean, you see it more now with prisons and stuff in movies. I mean, but
they usually don't go on as long as this one.
But it's not as
you don't get out in the wild, I guess.
Yeah, there's some stare into the abyss and the abyss stares back at you moments with that scene. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
I mean, very few times, even before the 1970s. I mean, rape was depicted. It was hinted at. They never really showed. It was heavily implied, like the one movie, Two Women with Sophia Loren. They showed like the bare minimum they could get away with the fact that the mother and daughter both get gang raped by a bunch of rebels. And so the fact that 1973 and a movie like this comes out with such a graphic rape scene, it's like between two men, it's like it's something that's never been seen before.
Yeah, what year was Straw Dogs? Was Straw Dogs before or after this? I'm trying to remember. The thing is that's 71. The Peckinpah movie is like right before it, but that's like one of the only other examples I can think of.
Yeah.
Yeah, because everything I'm thinking of happened after I Spit on Your Grave and Death Wish.
Yeah,
and honestly, like it's completely overused. I mean, that's one of my biggest complaints about The Last Duel. It was like, really, come on, that's what you got your inciting incident. Okay, I don't know. Mark, what do you think about any of that?
I don't. I think about other things.
Fair.
Yeah, I mean,
fair.
That's a good. Yeah, I mean, when people be asking me crazy stuff and say, "What do you think about that?" So I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, man. I'm not thinking about that. And it's on my list of 8,741 things that ain't on it, man. But it's a good life. It's a great world, and I came to James Dickey through kind of like his legend of self-create, or just a lot of hard work that he was not. I mean, he's academically educated, certainly, but he took it upon himself to create his own life and became his own, not unlike a Bob Dylan, who became their own institution through sheer force of will and momentum of their idiosyncratic ambition, aided and embedded only by themselves. And like when Dickie was working in Atlanta for Coca-Cola, he'd be in his office working on his poetry as well. And that's what I mean, is that his life and his work was not only an infinite tapestry, but it was a tapestry that didn't have parameters cut off by the limitations of where he particularly was working or what he was doing, that what his mind and work was always within that tapestry of the general flow of 24 hours of life a day.
I think it's interesting too that you mentioned in his screenplay that it's not really like a traditional screenplay. And as someone that's done both, like being the screenwriter and a director, I know when I first attempted to write a screenplay, I didn't know what I was doing. So I put in like every piece of everything. And then I read an actual screenplay and it was like, oh, I'm doing this so wrong. Like that isn't.
You didn't get that finish a screenplay in 90 days book or whatever.
30.
Did not get that. But
30. That was my name.
Well, I probably could have if I wasn't putting in.
Of it. No.
If I wasn't putting in literally every piece of direction, like I basically had it like, oh, this would be how it was directed. This would be how the set would be designed. Like, and I had no idea because how would I know, right? Because I did. But that's probably an autodidact. You only got to rely on yourself.
Although, to be fair, I read the Highlander script in college, so I knew what a script was supposed to look like.
But Mark, getting back to what I was saying is that I think it's interesting you mentioned that Dickie wrote the original script and that it was kind of almost, I guess you would call it overwritten, probably.
Correct. Yes.
Because they're different skills. And I think that maybe even people that are really into films, as maybe people listening to or watching the show might be, may not understand the difference. And I think that's actually, this is a good conversational topic for this movie, because if this was overwritten, it doesn't work as a film. I don't think.
Even the parts that are overwritten in this a little bit, I would say that you get a lot of information about them at different times, like the scene where they're all, it's kind of building character stuff, but there's probably some lines you can cut. But even then, when it is kind of overwritten in the sense of their conversations between each other that might give away a stilted amount of information, I think it was written sparsely enough that it works.
Yeah, I think we're talking about two different things. That his screenplay literally was overwritten.
Yeah,
and when
I get what you're saying. He wrote it like a novel, right? Like he wrote out the.
But when they made a real screenplay and film, that there was nothing overwritten in the film itself. One of the things is that each scene has an arc and so forth, and within the template of a standard narrative. And Dickie didn't understand that you don't end scenes with superfluous codas and so forth, because that dilutes the impact of the trajectory. Each scene has a trajectory, and in Hollywood terms, you have to respect that and respect each unit, which is a scene. And the old adage, you come in at the last moment and leave at the, or come in at the latest time and leave at the earliest time of a scene. and that's just the way that narrative films work. And if the professional filmmaker or writer and that will clean all that stuff up and get rid of stuff and make sure that each scene has a beginning, middle, and end that's appropriate to the context of the aggregate of the film, and so on and so forth. And a beginning writer or a novice screenwriter like Dickie wouldn't understand that, wouldn't be able to comprehend that like a professional screenwriter.
Well, he's thinking like a novelist.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean,
and adapting a novel directly into a format he doesn't understand. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a novel that's written ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, different media has like different results. So like, you can't adapt. You can't be too true with a comic book, because if you do that, it doesn't quite work, because the structures aren't the same. You need to make a comic book work for the film. You need to make the book work for the comic book. You need to, what if you're taking something from one medium and going into another medium, you gotta think about like what would benefit the story for this medium.
Yeah, and I think with a movie like this, it's all about kind of being sparse about, like, you want to know these characters, but you don't want to over know these characters, right? Like, you don't want someone to go off on some whole tangent about, like, like a couple times they do with like the family or whatever, or the job, and like you kind of know something, like you know enough about them by the time they get into this that you kind of know probably what like tropes they're gonna fall into, or how their survivalist mentality is gonna work. This movie kind of reminds me of like Lord of the Flies a little bit, right? Like,
yes, that's exactly what I was thinking too. I was like, this is giving me Lord of the Flies.
It was the pig part, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Piggy. No, but it's like, in the same way, right? Like each of them represents a different part of the like urban rural dynamic. And, you have like, I think it's kind of fascinating that Burt Reynolds' character's name's Larry, right? Like this is
Drew Medlock. I mean, not Lewis Medlock.
Lewis
Medlock.
So his character, right, is someone who's kind of cultivated this hunter persona where he's like, oh, I love the outdoors, but like just like Ronnie Cox says, like, he can't hack it. Like, he's not really an outdoors guy, right? Like, he's kind of someone, and I think everybody knows people like that. Like, people that are like, oh, like, I'm a big hunter. I'm out in the wilderness all the time. But it's like, yeah, but like a very like self-cultivated, I guess, version of that. Like, you're not going into the deep, which a lot of people like die on Mount Everest and stuff for that reason. Yeah. Like, they just can't hack it. And you get the feeling that that's that guy, right? Like, that's Burt Reynolds' character is the guy that dies.
I mean, he shows up dressed as a superhero and he like breaks his leg and is out for the rest of the movie.
Speaking of breaking legs, speaking of breaking legs, you know how many injuries this film had, and like drownings, and I mean, this film was dangerous to film.
Well, they're on the rapids. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you can't.
Yeah, it's really them.
Benny almost drowned. Like, he got caught up in a whirlpool, and Burt Reynolds broke his tailbone at one point.
Yes. I don't think they got insurance for the film. They did it without insurance, I believe, because of that.
What does the Burt Reynolds character say about insurance in this? It's hilarious. It's deeply hilarious knowing that. I don't need insurance.
I don't believe in it. He said, I don't believe in it.
Right, I don't believe in insurance.
So when I break my tailbone,
like this would be dangerous to film, because there's probably not a high budget for it.
It's not practical effects. It's literally happening. Like, they're doing stuff that stunt people would be doing now.
And they filmed it all in the Chattahoochee River.
Yeah.
So that's the second best song in this movie that about the Chattahoochee. First best, of course, being Alan Jackson.
Oh, they're gonna say dueling banjos.
That was the first thing they filmed too, while the rest of the movie was in sequence. Of course, they would film that first.
Yeah. I mean, Ronnie Cox really is a guitar player and tours around now. He's retired from acting and is a full-time musician.
I think they should have let the kid smash the banjo like he's on stage. Like,
Well, but real talk though, that is an iconic scene for a reason. Like, and it plays out in a little bit. I was thinking about, remember when we did Murder and Extravaganza and we talked about the Harbinger and like that trope of like, the don't go to the old cabin kind of thing. Yeah. Like, in a way, like in an indirect way, like that crew, and especially like the banjo kid, is a bit of a harbinger, right? Where it's sort of like where he like goes to shake his hand and he just like moves his head away, like,
and they literally see him over the river at that one point, and there's
and he's just around, just hanging out around. But like, for a second you're like, oh, they're having a moment, great, they're actually acclimating, oh, everything's gonna be fine, and then like you just get that kind of like, oh no, they're outsiders, and they don't want them to be there. And then you have Burt Reynolds like doing the thing like, oh, I'll go find the river first, and I'll go this way and that way, and just like making the fool of himself too. And
Typical
just
Burt Reynolds.
Exactly.
And of course,
man, I should have changed my name to Turd Ferguson.
Still time.
That Norm Macdonald bit is so funny when they're doing the Celebrity Jeopardy thing and
what's up, Popeye?
But RIP to two legends.
I mean, Mark, what do you think about that? I mean, I think it's a pretty iconic scene, right? I mean, it's got
right. But let me ask you this, and then are we all aware of the actuality of the making of that with the kid playing the banjo?
I actually don't.
Are you guys for real?
Yeah,
I mean, he's a legit like backwoodser, right? Isn't he?
No, he's not a legitimate player because you want me to tell you?
I know he's not playing it. I know that they put his arms through they did like the. It's like that Kids in the Hall bit where like the hands are a different person than the person. That I knew, but like he is a legitimate like that kid is like not like. Was not. I think he's been in stuff since. Like I think he was in Big Fish and stuff. But like he's not an He was not an actor at the time, but he also was not a professional level banjo player either. That I did know. And you can always kind of tell when you play. I think. I don't know.
And don't forget the classic film Blast Fighter.
Who could forget Blast Fighter?
Yes,
he was from Georgia too. He was discovered so he was discovered while they were scouting it in Georgia, and he was like just a kid in Georgia that they hired to be in it. And
that song became a huge hit after this movie, like gigantic worldwide hit.
Because it slaps.
Well, and it was known before, but like it had like, and there was like some rights contention. Like there's a whole, I mean, it's more like after party business, I guess, but like there's a whole story just behind that song. I think that part I know and I'm fascinated by.
What do you guys think about? I mean, there's kind of like the environmentalist movement, right? Like conservationist movement happening at the time this movie's filmed. It's a big, they're like, oh, well, maybe we've gone too far. But that is like a cultivated political identity, right? Like those are kind of a lot of the time rich liberals like going into places and going, oh, we need to save this or that, which a lot of times are like places that people already live. You know what I mean? Like it's not like it's people coming back from the city and then trying to rediscover rural like backwoods areas. And I think this movie does a really good job playing those two things off each other, where it's like, no, like these people are like here, like this is where they live. They don't think about, nature as this kind of almost like primal mystical force. But like, I think having the Ronnie Cox character be kind of like a Pete Seeger, like, or like a kind of folk music kind of guy, you know what I mean? Like that kind of hippie.
The only role where he actually gets to do that, really.
Yeah.
Because he plays bad guys for the rest of his career.
I think it just makes it a really fascinating kind of nexus point.
Well, they're outsiders, right? And that goes back to what I was saying about it being like the harbinger. And like you mentioned Texas Chainsaw Massacre too, where there's, very clear harbinger. But like, I think that the whole banjo scene is like, that's, it's not explicitly don't go into that barn, but it's like, hey, maybe rethink this, especially when like, the guy is like, like when he mentions, what is a nice hat. And then like that scene is like, whoa, all right. I mean,
the guy's like, you don't know nothing or something. And
yeah. What's interesting too, like bringing up the screenplay when in the screenplay he says, "Man, I like the way you wear your hat," and in the film he says, "Mister, I like the way you wear that hat," and that makes all the difference in the world. Man is just this ubiquitous colloquialism, widespread, and Mr. kind of gives it a sharp 2-syllable staccato to it, and just it changes everything. From the screenplay to script, just that one word from man to Mr. with that hat scene.
Yeah, and I think that like kind of using, I guess, colloquialisms like that, and having them speak in certain ways, right? Like the dialogue is very organic, I think. You know what I mean? Like it really does sound like they're just kind of people hanging around. But the way that the movie starts, you don't know anything about them, and they're arguing about like, conservationism and I like that they kind of foreshadow everything by going, they're gonna rape this river. Like that's like one of the first things that they're going back and forth. And they're having this conversation, and it's kind of
the river rapes back,
apparently. But I just kind of I think it's interesting that they it seems like the dialogue is extremely organic, I would say. Like it seems like the dialogue really does sound like, these kind of guys who you don't really know whether they know each other too well. Like some of them seem to have only started hanging out recently. They're just kind of going on a fishing trip. And yeah, kind of found that interesting.
I think when you're on set, or when you're in rehearsal or on set and you start doing lines, you begin to realize what works and what doesn't. And like, well, you know, people really don't speak like this. Let's speak like a person really would, you know. And so I think a lot of that for a lot of scripts, I think that when you hear, especially like you say, organic dialogue that's like unmistakably like real, yeah, that's what a person would say. Generally, that's not in a script. Scripts usually have more of a classical connotation of dialogue, and then once they get to filming it, they say, hey, you know, this tone, this film, we want a particular tone of realism, so let's make the dialogue realistic. So a lot of those neat lines and things that we hear are on the spot or by the actors or by the director, and it's not, a lot of the times it's not the script writer that comes up with a lot of that.
That's the big David Mamet thing, right? Like he's always like writing dialogue that humans would not normally be speaking aloud.
Right. That's a whole different thing. Well, number one, obviously with the theater with Mamet, when he does theater, you can't change one word by law. For theater, with film, you can throw out the whole script. But his deal is that, you know, you obey each and every word of the script, and it comes out theatrical. But that's when you see a David Mamet film, that's part of the contract between you, the paying audience, and the filmmakers, that you will see a very melodramatic theatrical interpretation of life. So you've contracted by knowing what his films are like, you know.
And sometimes you get to see Alec Baldwin and Anthony Hopkins fight a bear.
We covered that movie, The Edge, from the 90s.
Which I think is the only Mammoth film we've done so far.
Which is really bizarre because I was not familiar with it. I was like, what are they doing?
Did you guys know that Jack Nicholson agreed to play Ed as long as Marlon Brando played Lewis?
Wow.
Wow.
That movie would slap. I would watch the fuck out of that.
That is a different movie.
With Jack Nicholson and Marlon Brando, you know that was going to be a hefty fee to put them both in this film. So that's why they went for cheaper actors. I'm like, oh yeah, the father of Angelina
but that
Jolie.
was like while Jack Nicholson was like on his way up. He hadn't quite become, because this is a couple of years. This is just before Cuckoo's Nest.
It's before Cuckoo's Nest.
It's 75.
Yeah. It's before Chinatown. So yeah, like he was, so Easy Rider had already come out, but like that's probably about it. I think,
it was like that, and Head was his only big
Head.
But man, imagine if it had those two in that film.
Could they have fit Marlon Brando in a canoe? I guess still at that point they could have.
They could have just used him.
He famously started to get like big to the point where like they couldn't really move him. Like,
I've seen The Godfather. I know. He's on his way.
But yeah.
But I think that's a different movie though, because like I think that almost there might have been too much acting, and I hate to say that because I love both those guys, but there might have been too much acting.
The raping the river.
Also, to imagine
the raping
the rape scene.
Yeah.
We're always the one in Last Tango in Paris. So
in 2012, they interviewed Billy Redden, who was the banjo playing kid. He said he's working at Walmart, didn't see a dime from the film, like struggling to make ends meet, still in his town in Georgia. And the quote he said is, "We're not a bad people up here. We're a loving people. Raven County is a pretty good town. It's peaceful, not a lot of crime going on, just a real peaceful town. Everybody pretty much gets along with everybody," which is kind of the exact opposite of the movie that we just watched.
Yeah.
Well, that's not a movie though. That's just like, hey,
no,
check
I know,
out
but
this with this river, you know.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's kind of fascinating that like
where's the inciting incident? Hey, everybody was really nice to us and we had a great time. Cool. Nice film.
But what I'm saying is it's interesting they picked that town, found locals from that town to like be like kind of menacing rednecks, and then it's just an interest. Like
it stigmatized the South for a couple generations. Yeah. I get where you're going with.
Well, that's not the only thing that stigmatized the South for a couple of generations, but you know. They put in a lot of work there themselves.
So Mark, is that in the book? Like, does the book / OG unfilmable screenplay like have that menace to it? Because I think it's supposed to be autobiographical, isn't it?
No. First and foremost, we want to thank Carl King for all your comments and your patronage to this show, because I'm seeing the comments here. So Carl, we all 5 of us appreciate you listening in and commenting too. And
I pulled this up when he said, "Damn good point."
Yes,
That's just a good all-purpose comment, I think.
It is an all-purpose comment.
Well, we'll just keep bringing it up as the show goes on.
Exactly. Just pull the same up every time you speak.
Or just have it scroll across. Good point, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. Autobiographical. What's interesting about that is the only autobiographical thing about it is that one of the Dickie said that kind of like what the catalyst for writing the novel was. I think he and some friends may have been wandering through some backwoods and so forth, and they came up to a house and they may have sat down on a porch or something. This is and then that the owner actually approached them, came up to his property, and Dickie could feel that the potential for malevolence from this. I mean, there was nothing happened, but he said that if this guy would have turned to a more malevolent side of his personality, it could have been trouble. So he just thought about everything was fine, but he just used that and thought about that encounter, a very ultimately benign encounter. But he thought, well, what if it wasn't? It turned malevolent, and that he claims is the catalyst for Deliverance. So that's like, dude, when Conan, you thought it's autobiographical like this, it turned out to be like that.
Not much, yeah. Just exactly. Just
one time I met
that. Oh wow! Donald Sutherland turned down the role of Ed because he objected to the violence in the script. He later said he regretted turning down the film.
He said, "Get in, loser. We're going canoeing."
It would have been much better to have Donald Sutherland than John Voight.
Well, John Voight does pretty.
Oh, John Voight's a phenomenal actor. He's a terrible person, and
it's hard to remember that he because it feels like a lot of times John Voight now is kind of a lazy actor. You know what I mean? Like
Marlon Brando towards the end of his career.
Yeah, well, just I feel like he's just John Voight. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you hit a certain point where you're so ubiquitous, I guess. Like, you know, like that everybody's like, oh well, that's just John Voight. Like, I feel like
Billy's dad's at it again, guys.
I don't know. He tried in Anaconda. I don't know what accent he was doing, but it was amazing.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, like, he's a dude that just seems to like to get political, and like that seems to be his whole thing right now, as some people tend to do when they get older. Yeah. It's a shame. I forgot. Well, another great actor that just just seems to be real busy antagonizing people.
No, Disney still fucks with James Woods though, because of the fact he's a phenomenal Hades. Like, hey, we need you for the voice of Hades. All right, let's do it.
There you go. But the I mean, I forgot about the climbing scene, which is pretty incredible. In this, like the whole him scaling the mountain.
I've always had trouble with that because it's almost
like James Bond or something, you know? It's like, what's going on here?
It's a big slog in the script and in the novel as well. It's very unlikely, and it's precipitated. His reason for doing it is precipitated on this very narrow margin of thinking that a hillbilly might be waiting for hours on top of the hill at this particular specific spot, which is like the chance of that is like winning the lottery ticket. And also that he, who has never climbed a rock face before, who's completely spiritually broken, physically, so much physical attrition has occurred to his body throughout this journey by now that it'd be like literally impossible to scale a 90-degree angle, almost a 90-degree angle like that. It's
strange credulity.
It's a launch. It's an incredulous thing to believe.
Well, like, wow, I just found out that I'm really, really good at climbing out of nowhere. Never done it before. Never gone up anything before, but like, whoa.
I know that the actors needed a bit of training. I know Ned Beatty, for playing a character that's kind of clumsy, he did have like experience in like canoeing.
Well, you have to for those scenes. I mean, I've gone river rafting, but not canoeing.
Bow and arrows, though, that's for sure.
Oh, I've gone canoeing a lot. It's it kind of sucks after a while.
I did it in the Pine Barrens. I was like, "Oh, Jersey Devil, any dead bodies? What's going on here?"
And you found that one Russian guy from The Sopranos that got away from them in the Pine Barrens.
I took archery in college.
I
took archery in college, and my professor, first day of class, goes, "Son, I ain't never seen anybody shoot an arrow sideways before." So
and then you ended up getting.
I was most improved in class.
You'd be the guy like John Voight, who's in this next clip that hit himself with the arrow.
Yeah. That's probably the most believable part about that whole sequence is that like he accidentally injures himself.
Yes.
Because it's like it's one thing when it's like, oh, such and such is like an experienced hunter, they've hunted their entire lives, this person rock climbs every day, blah blah, and then someone's like, wait, what he's scaling the mountain? All right.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have my own opinions on that. Like it seemed like the part of the movie was like, Burt Reynolds was like pretending, was cosplaying as, superhero Hawkeye.
I mean, this looks like it could be a scene from Zardoz.
Yeah.
He took his skills climbing up the ladder in the corporate world, and he transplanted those skills into climbing that rock face.
but yeah, he basically found it within himself, even though like earlier he couldn't shoot the deer because he was shaking and he had that thing of doubt in his head. But the doubt left him, and he was able to climb the mountain. For the doubt is gone. Hallelujah.
He had Sigma grind set. That's what he really had. He had the hustle mentality.
We knew each other from the beginning, and we laughed a lot from the beginning. So there was always that ingredient. And John has a great sense of humor, terrific sense of humor. So he was the proper master for us to be dealing with at that time.
We were rehearsing in this sort of country club in Clayton, Georgia, because the actors had to train in canoe and archery and get fit. And we had, it was a lot of work to do to get them into a state where they'd be able to safely make this picture.
And we had 2 weeks of rehearsal where we all just sort of were together, and we got together every day, all day.
But we would sit for hours and we talk about our relationship, but then we talk about, did our parents know each other? And how did we get to be friends? And we wrote a novel. John did anyway, and I tried to help.
And so Jim came up and sat in the bar, and he had this booming voice and this powerful presence, and he was very intimidating.
And Dickie always called us by our character names. And he went, "Lewis, I'm talking to you, boy. Come over here." And the girl said, "I think Mr. Dickie wants you." And I said, "He ain't talking to me. My name ain't Lewis. My name is Burton. Tomorrow morning, I'll be Lewis." And then he got up. And I could feel him coming, across. And I was sitting in a bar stool. Now, a bar stool was pretty tall. And he was so big that he stood up over me, and his hands down like this on the bar, and his head was still here. And he went, "Now, Lewis, last talking to you, boy, I asked you to come over there. I want to talk to you." I said, "Mr. Dickie, I'm not Lewis. I'm Bert now. Tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, I'll be Lewis. But now, get out of my goddamn face." And there was a quiet little moment there where I thought, possibly he will kill me, or cut me, or stab me, or whatever. And he went, "That's exactly what Lewis would have said." And then he went back over and drove them crazy for the rest of the evening. Never bothered me again.
That's a lot of Botox.
That's your takeaway from that.
Yes.
I like how he's like this kind of British dude or whatever that's and then but like the idea that like he's just this kind of menacing presence himself, it seems like, you know what I mean? Like they're talking about like, oh, like he's a really high intensity director. He didn't come off that way, but
no. And if you ever watch the comments on Excalibur, he's a very dry sense of humor about things.
As
I like Excalibur. I thought that was a pretty good movie. That was a pretty good movie.
Yeah. It's not great. It's just pretty good.
Yeah, I chose my words carefully.
Yeah, no. It's. I love it, but like
I was trying to think of what John Boorman was up to before this. Of course, there was Midnight Cowboy and Catch-22, but like,
yeah,
it seems like this was like a pretty big shot in the arm for him.
This was before fatherhood.
Yes, it was.
I think Yeah, this movie gets referenced so much throughout pop culture too. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it kind of feels like
Midnight Cowboy. That was his big movie before this.
Yeah, that's what I say. Midnight Cowboy and Catch 22 are the only two I can really think of before this, which I like both those.
You know, there's a great book on that just came out on the making of Midnight Cowboy, and obviously
that's a great one.
When they create these books, it's not just the making of the film; it's the history of everybody involved and the history of the authors, all of that kind of stuff. So I'm reading this book on the making of Midnight Cowboy, but Dickey's son, he's got two of them. His son, Chris Dickey, wrote a book called Summer of Deliverance that I wrote, and I definitely want to see if I can find that book again and read that. That was a kind of like a fascinating account of his father during the time of Deliverance. So it's
wasn't he like on set or something at some like he was like involved, like just kind of it was a whole thing, right? I heard about this. Yeah, like
that I read that book years ago, and I have a couple copies, but I've got so many books I don't know, I gotta find it again. But there's a great book, a couple of them. One is they're by James Dickey. One is called Self Interviews, and it's just fascinating to go into his world and so forth. And actually, I think it's Henry Hart did an extensive, a massive tome, extensive biography on Dickey called "The World Is a Lie," and it's just it was just when it came out, I got it, and just cover to cover went into its world.
I have two clips of him to play in the after party, but they're like longer, so I figured I would wait till the after party to do that. But I have an interview with the four of them talking about the four actors talking about doing the pig squealing scene that I wanted to play before we go to the letterbox.
I guess we had to address it, didn't we? Yeah. I mean, I guess we kind of talked about it before, but it is amazing how that scene has like even people that have never seen the film like know the context of that scene and what it is and what it signifies. Like it's
been referenced everywhere. Like it's been referenced
a million times.
From even like Rick and Morty, it's been referenced. I think even like in Adam Sandler movie, like it's been referenced in like a weird amount of places. I feel like,
yeah, to the point that I think some people don't even realize what it's from necessarily. It's like like when it used to be called a flying disc, but it's and the brand name was Frisbee, but then it just became a Frisbee a certain degree, whatever that is for scenes. Anyway, play this thing.
Much like a Frisbee.
Yeah.
By the time I saw Deliverance for the first time, I had already heard all of the references to the squeal like a pig scene and the intensity of that. So how do you think it might be impossible for someone to be surprised or shocked that that's in the movie? How do you think that changes the way the film is viewed now?
Oh, I can't think it changes it much because those images came out of real life things. But Bill McKinney and I and the director, we were both throwing stuff in the pot, and that's where all that stuff came from. And the way he caught me when I ran, it scripted. It was just the fact that I gave in to what the situation was, and I made myself available to whatever he wanted to do to me. But John Boorman didn't believe that. He thought, well, aren't you going to try to do something? So what he really wanted is for me to run. And when I ran, I remembered how when I was in the situation, we were dealing with big boar hogs, and how this older man would have to grab one of the back legs, and I would have to hit it with the tackle and then roll up on top of it and then put the rope around the legs. And all this stuff was going on. And that's when we came to the squealing of the pig thing. And
it was a replacement.
I don't think it means anything that people have heard that line. You know, I've heard lines that are in movies, and I'm still thrilled when I hear the lines, and that's the way I feel about that picture. I don't think it matters.
And see, I don't think that scene lets anybody off the hook. It doesn't let the actors off the hook. It doesn't let the audience off the hook. And so it doesn't matter what you may have heard about that film. It doesn't prepare you for that scene.
Yeah. It was. I must tell you that most of the people that were on the film did not want us to do the scene. A lot of people that were there on the film, and a lot of the families they didn't want us to do the scene. But the scene was pretty important to the movie, so we did it.
Right on.
It's hard to think about this movie without it, frankly.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what would this movie really? I mean, it wouldn't be as terrifying, right? Like
some guys have a nice time on the river. I mean, like what?
Maybe, why are they murdering these people? What's
and then
going
one of them falls in. I don't know. I just I think that there's nothing more terrifying than rape as an idea, right? Like just the fact that some menacing presence could do something that horrifying to you, I think is kind of one of the most genuinely terrifying things. And I think that this movie is terrifying because of that. I don't see how it could work otherwise. But there's also, I mean, to Mark's point earlier about this, I don't really know, because they come upon those guys, right? Like they arrive on the thing and they're kind of standing there. But there's the other part where they hear something in the woods and there's kind of this general menace to it. And he's like looking around trying to see if like what it is. But like it's the scene before that, at night and when they're in the tents. And I wonder, are they being hunted the entire time, or do they just kind of stumble into it? Or because I think you could read it either way.
Well, and it's almost like, and I guess it'd be a more modern take on it, but like a more modern take on this film would be very different in a lot of ways, but not the least of which is that it would be like, it would have to be revealed that, they're being hunted the entire time, or that it's all in their head or whatever. And I think that that's one of the things that makes this movie interesting, is it's sort of left up to the viewer to figure that out or not figure it out, right? Or not even think about it and have that like, oh, have they been followed like throughout like all the way down the river since then, or like whatever. Like it's up to the viewer to kind of figure out, fill in the blanks in that way. That's my take on it.
Yeah, and in some ways I think it's almost like, I mean, symbolically I guess it's almost like the river is doing something back to them, like, you know what I mean? Like although they're humans, like it's almost like nature is almost reclaiming them in some,
like they're baptized now. And
yeah, but just the carnage.
Is it in this?
Like,
and that's a common trope in films. I know some people say war turns men into beasts. I'm like, nature can do that.
Yeah, nature is by definitionally a beast, and it's a beast that we just kind of keep kicking. Like and I think that in sci-fi like that's a pretty common thing too. Like when does nature strike back at you?
Do they spell that out in like the screenplay at all, or is that not really explicitly mentioned, or the book about like them basically being tailed throughout this journey, or if it's just they show up when they show up and that's what the film is?
Mark freeze.
Oh, Mark, still there?
Yes.
That was funny. That was good. Like does it spell it out?
What I was into, what I was doing. What's the question?
So like we were talking about, are they being followed?
Oh, you know what's okay. So that's excellent to consider that. But when you talk about the tent and so forth, when you read the screenplay in the novel, actually that it gets attacked by like an eagle or so forth, and I believe that's not in the film. I haven't seen it for a while. That there's a menace outside, but it's actually a huge bird. In the claws, one of the guys actually wrestles with the eagle's claws that penetrates the tent.
Oh man, that would have been really hard to film.
Yes, yeah, right.
I don't think they could show penetration back then.
I imagine it being like that video where Trump got attacked by the eagle on his desk because there was.
Yeah, so when you say that, are they being followed? Is there a feeling of being watched and followed? That's kind of like addressed actually, but in a completely different and very arbitrary way.
Yeah, because it's sort of like the quiet menace of the whole thing is like, that seems like that to me.
Right, and then we discussed, remember, that ambiguous menace that could possibly be in the woods, that could possibly be within the shadows in the interior of the building of Griner's workshop, all of that kind of stuff. So Dickie was always hinting at an unseen presence that was out there, that was never explained, never revealed, but it was just that sense of kind of like perpetual mystery, especially in the beginning. But again, it has no narrative weight. It's a kind of like not so much a red herring, but an undercurrent of similar tone that does not strictly actually exist itself on the surface,
right? It's building up a vibe,
Yeah.
like like a kind of terrifying one. But I mean, I don't know. I feel this feeling a lot of times, almost like I'm being watched when I'm outside at night, and we're walking outside at night, and like obviously there's always kind of, it sounds like things are moving or something, like when you're living somewhere that's more rural, and like
yeah, my mom's having that experience right now living with my Oma. She's like, she hears like this nice, like this little like hissing sound. She's like, here, kitty, 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 and it's a fox.
Oh, there's a fox down the street from me right now that's
What does the
watching a lot of
fox
Tucker
say?
Carlson, but I don't know. But there's a fox on the street that's in heat that keeps it sounds like a little kid screaming.
This isn't a Russ Meyer flick. Come on.
But yeah.
Thank you.
Conan, do you want to jump to the one-liners and
Sure. So, the one thing I was going to mention before I forget is that I think it's amazing that these guys will drive our cars down to the bottom of the river. Yeah. These guys that we just met.
Guys we've never met before. That
other guy we just met vouches for.
Yeah. This all. Yeah. There's no problem here. Like, yeah. Okay. I mean, I guess 1971 was a different time, but like, I mean, I would be like, yeah, that's what you're just gonna give me your keys, huh? All right.
The guy says they might be able to drive your car down. Like maybe, and then they're like,
yeah, exactly. It's not even declarative. That's what gets me. It's like not even like you don't have like any kind of written contract. You don't have any kind of like stakes at all. Like, what's to stop these dudes from just running off with your cars, man? Like,
and they get back there. And they seem like genuinely surprised. Like, oh yeah, the cars are here.
Yeah, it's just like, well, that's probably the most shocking part of the movie to me, frankly. I mean, like, it's like, oh, they didn't rip off their cars. Oh, amazing.
They're not covered in mud and
right,
players are missing.
These are Hicks. Where would they hide the cars? Everyone would hear about it.
I guess. I don't know. I mean, maybe
they can't take the CD players out of the cars and sell them on eBay.
This is 1971. It would have been like 8-track player at best, right? I mean,
yeah.
Also, the guy's in a kind of a car lot where there's a bunch of just car parts. Like you could think that he would just disassemble the car,
just strip them. Yeah, can make some money. I mean, like I don't know if it's. Look, I'm from Oakland. Like that's just how I think, right? I mean, it's you wouldn't even you're just like, hey, can you just drive this down there for me? Thanks, friend.
He lowballs him too,
dude. Yeah, exactly. He also tries to give him. He totally tries to lowball. I'm like, man, this is not the dude that you should be trying to bargain down, man.
And he curses out. He's like, I guess I'll just go over here, you asshole, or something. And then the guy looks really menacing for a second. He's like, 40, and it's like. That worked. You just lowball the redneck guy. You think your car's gonna be there when you get back?
Just offhandedly contentious for no reason. It's like, dude, like think about what you're doing here. Like, come on. But I don't know.
But I think that's part of the whole movie, right? This guy is reckless and he's not thinking about what he's doing. He's like, I'm gonna be fine. It's the river. What's the worst that could happen?
He looks at that character looks at the brash and impetuous nature of what he's doing and sees it as like an attribute of masculinity and like, something to aspire to, rather than being like, man, you're just being a reckless dick, frankly.
Yeah.
As evidenced by the fact that not all of them, come out of it alive. And anyway, whatever. That's either here.
And you think that Ned Beatty's character is going to be like kind of a dick. He's fucking with the guy's hat and stuff. And then he turns out to be like the sweetest out of them and exactly. Fucking, yeah.
As the most horrifying outcome and is the sweetest character. Anyway, Letterboxd is a place for film, is a social media site for film lovers to talk at, with, and to each other about the films they love, the films they didn't love, the films they were scared by, the films they were thrilled by. All of this is, of course, best expressed in the Work on Your Tight 5 one-liner format. Not just Siskel and Eberts. Everyone gets to have their say. Bottom-up democracy. These are the Letterboxd one-liners that we will react to for the movie Deliverance. Did more damage to the image of the South than slavery.
Oh, what?
Username Toblerone, by the way, which I thought was pretty good.
Well, I think it's a nice little cherry on top. I don't think it's the entire sundae, but it's the cherry on top.
Yes.
Let's go canoeing, he said. It'll be fun, he said.
Mm-hmm. Ain't that the truth?
Well, I'm like, I live right by a river with a boat landing in it. Like I live right by the boat landing, and I've had people be like, "Hey, I'm gonna take this. Like, can I get a canoe somewhere and rent one? Like, can I take it down the river?" And every single time, I'm the fucking redneck guy in my mind. It's like, you don't want to fuck around with no river.
You're the harbinger. You're the harbinger in that situation.
Yeah, well, that's because Forrest hangs out by the docks with a banjo.
For different reasons, though. I say you don't want to go in that river because it's it's a Hudson River tributary and it's gross. And if you have an open cut, it gets infected.
This movie significantly deteriorated the chances for banjo players to get laid by anyone outside their family tree.
Were they ever intending to? I don't know.
I actually saw Pete Seeger's grandson do a show, and he goes, "What's the difference between a large pizza and a banjo player?" And everybody's like, quiet, and he goes, "A pizza could feed a family of 4."
Oh, hey, these are the jokes, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, but see, Pete Seeger, who like I have actually met, like when he was alive, but he's a lot like that Drew character, right? Like he's the like the hippie kind of like, hey man, maybe we should do this, like, but not in the way that like the more brash Lewis is.
All right, banjo guitar duet went so hard.
It did. It slapped. I mean, that was just a great number.
It was. It's an iconic scene for a reason.
Yeah.
But there was only one banjo in Dueling Banjos, which is weird.
Yes. Agreed. It's a misnomer. I'm never getting a canoe, and I'm never getting anywhere near a river.
Smart reply, I think, to this movie.
Yeah. Although I gotta say though, what is that? Where you're sitting in a raft down a river. That's fun.
Yeah, but I mean,
you have
to know what you're doing, and in this movie,
it's just a different type of boat, though. Like, what? How is that different? Like,
douche canoe.
The ones float up by air, man. It's totally different.
How is that better? How is that an improvement? Is it more likely to pop?
It's not rigid.
Okay.
All right. I would simply take 2 metal canoes. That's an incredibly time there.
You want to read that again so I can cut it better because your mic went out.
I would simply take 2 metal canoes.
I would have dueling canoes.
I would, yeah. But what 2 metal canoes would it be? Would it be like death metal canoes and black metal canoes?
Well, yeah, because that other one gets man. It gets destroyed. That's a crazy scene because that's not a scene you can redo. Like that canoe's dusted after that scene.
Yeah, this isn't the Edge and and the helicopter that or the plane.
Oh, yeah, they redid the plane crash. Yeah. Must be nice.
Yeah.
If Burt Reynolds has legendary mustache, everything would have worked out fine.
Yeah, would have scared off those 2 rednecks before anything could ever really happen.
Pre-mustache.
It was pre-mustache.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit like Chuck Norris's body hair quotient. Like once he grew in the beard, he could never be defeated. Because if you watch that movie he did with Bruce Lee was only able to defeat him because he was beardless, and Bruce Lee took out a chunk of his chest hair.
Okay.
Andrew World, everybody. Things go south.
Yeah.
Good one.
Seems like everyone had a lot of fun out there in the woods.
Imagine watching only the first half of this movie and not.
Oh, I know how this ends.
What a delightful trip. Yeah.
Seems like they made a lot of friendships during that time period. Yeah.
And those, of course, are the Letterboxd one-liners for Deliverance. Letterboxd social media site for film. Follow the show. That's your host, Forrest Miller, the unfortunate damn employee over there. You can also follow me. I, of course, am Conan Neutron. I'm all over Letterboxd. Andrew World is all over it as well, right about now, and he's reviewing all the stuff that you didn't know existed, or that I didn't know existed.
I didn't want to know some of these existed. I'm like, this thing exists. I'm going to watch it now.
He's an archival of stuff that nobody cares about. I'm Kristina, still threatening to do like the Johnny Depp thing, but you should follow our wonderful
I'm getting there.
On Letterboxd as well. Mark, I don't believe you're a Letterboxd user, right? I don't think you utilize that site, but
no, I'm not. But let's point. I think that Carl King has a valid point when he said, "Man, the sun went down in Milwaukee, didn't it?" He noticed.
Yeah,
I'm being lit by natural light.
I was gonna say you practically faded out. Usually when people say they're faded, it's a totally
I mean,
different.
in front of me,
thing.
it's still light. Where I live, it's a jungle in front of me. It's all just a canvas of dense green foliage where I watch the majestical translucence of the setting sun play upon the infinite leaves on a nightly basis. And now you're seeing its waning light.
Yeah, I didn't want to narc you out, but I know you very much have a wilderness around you, and that is something
in
we're talking about.
In the middle of
Yeah.
the city, I may add.
I'm on the other side of the city, which is very much more well lit, by the way.
Yes, yes.
The sun never sets on that side of the city.
No, it never sets on Casa de Neutron. Yep.
Now, in following obviously what you're doing, is this with all of this this epilogue of where people reside on this letterbox form? Is that indicating the close of the show?
It means we're almost to the final thoughts. We just have
because I have two final thoughts with the film.
Well, Andrew's gonna do 17 minutes of plugs first, then you can.
That's a lot of minutes.
It just seems like 17 minutes. It's because we keep interrupting him, really.
Yeah, that and like Conan has like 15,000 things to plug, so
I did too much. But Andrew World, take it away, please.
All right. If you're watching us on Twitch, please, if you can, subscribe. If you have an Amazon Prime account, you can subscribe for free, and that really does actually help us out. You're over on YouTube. Do the YouTube things like subscribe, comment, hit the bell, and big ask here, watch the video to the end so other film fans can find this content, and you get to hear that bitchin' Conan Neutron song.
It is indeed bitchin'. I agree with you.
If you're tired of watching our faces, or if you're really disturbed by Mark fading out to black, you can listen to this as an audio podcast. So wherever you get your podcast, we can be found. And also like and review us on whatever podcast service you prefer.
Can I break the fourth wall, Andy? Because I was asking about that podcast because I don't like to waste time and watch things, but I do fall asleep listening to the interesting voices such as yourselves. So this revelation that you could actually get it on a podcast is absolutely illuminating. So thank you.
All right.
Not illuminating in your room, but illuminating in general. I might add that I do like the video section because, of course, you get to see J. Andrew World's lovely apparel. I have made him step up his game, and of course, the lovely Kristina always brings her A game as well.
Yes.
So
I kind of go with the theme. I try. Like I was wearing zebra stripes, nature. Let's go.
All okay in my book.
How crazy? How crazy are you getting with it on Friday?
Who, me?
Yeah, you're going all out.
I'm going all out. I'm wearing my Harley cosplay. I got my Militant Injustice 2 inspired Harley cosplay.
All right. But before we get there, we also need to have...
We're still doing I told you it was 17 minutes.
Lots of tangents go through it. But we have a Patreon. The Patreon really does help us out as well. And if you become a patron, you can party forever because the after parties are always available to you.
You have to set that up a little bit better. You have to go. You have to set it up. You have to say, we do our after parties, for everybody this time. But if you want an after party forever,
after party
forever. We're getting there. We're getting there.
I didn't get there.
So if you need more Kristina in your life, and I know we all do. Who doesn't? You can find her on Twitch at Kristina. Actually, on all the different social media stuff.
Yes.
Twitter, but particularly Twitch. We want you
TikTok. Apparently, I'll never know.
Yeah, TikTok.
I'm never looking at it.
I'm going on this Amber Heard interview, guys. I'm just.
But if you want to help out Kristina specifically, she has a Patreon, so please hit that up if you can.
Yes, and I just interviewed Conan Neutron this past week.
Yeah.
How'd you land that one?
That was good.
She has a connection, She has a connection to Protonic Reversal, and
hey, that brings me to my next plug.
Hey,
Protonic Reversal, great show. Who do you have? Who are you going to have on this week?
This week is Mike Kunka of Godhead Silo. So that should be a good one. I don't think there's been anything from them since they sort of disappeared into the ether. So I tracked him down, and when he's done with his union meeting, he's going to talk to me all about Godhead Silo, Enemy Mine, and all that good stuff.
Exciting. And if you want to hear Conan sing, because you love our theme song and you just need to get more of his music, his latest album is Dangerous Nomenclature. And you can find that on Bandcamp. So you just look up Conan Neutron Bandcamp and to go to Google's or whatever you use to search for stuff. If you're still at Alta Vista, it'll bring you right there. And you can
ask Jeeves to put neutronfriends.bandcamp.com in for you. Yeah.
Yes.
There's a video coming for The Commuter, so I hear, that will be out when I get done filming it with Mark. It's getting there. We're getting there. It'll be before the end of summer.
Yes, we'll notice that like Conan has like 3 different hair lengths in it because it's taking so long.
Yeah, hopefully not. Hopefully not.
No.
But hopefully it'll be before Mark fades to black completely because I think it's getting there.
Yes, we've almost lost
fading
Mark.
into the darkness.
Speaking of which, is there anything you'd like to plug, Mark, or should I plug something?
I don't think so. I think that's all bullshit. But I would like to say, quite seriously, is to eat right and exercise. You know, to drink water. They debunked 8 glasses a day. Obviously, that's ridiculous. Everybody has a different metabolism. But to have a banana, an apple, an orange, and maybe strawberries and grapes and so forth, and and to keep your back straight, because that's very important, because that's how the mechanism, the body function.
As the entire show adjusts their posture.
You heard it. Shout out to apples. Shout out to oranges.
Yeah.
Shout out to water. Shout out to straight backs.
Yeah, and when you walk, don't just put one foot in front of the other. Take some walks that are actually calibrated to the sensibility of raising your heart rate and getting good exercise. And I only bring this up because I love all 4 of you, and in addition, the audience as well. And I just want you guys to be happy and healthy.
I've been doing a lot of biking. Like I got a new bicycle last week, and I've been riding around on my one that's kind of like fucked up. Like the gears were like just not working correctly, so I got a new one. Mobius, I guess, is the name. I found we found it somewhere, so it's not even so it was free. But it literally
Did you get a Morbius the Living Vampire bicycle? Is that what
yeah.
you're telling me?
I got a
It's a bicycle by day, vampire at night.
Jared Pedo.
Pedal.
Fire. Bicycles are great exercise. I agree.
Yeah, I actually am looking forward to the new place where we're actually going to have a place to actually use the exercise bike that we bought, and I can actually breathe, which is one of my big problems. Is I can't exercise at home right now. In the wintertime, it's hard to get out there and do something to get your heart rate up. But this winter, I am looking forward to actually being able to, one, breathe, because I won't be living in a place where I have neighbors who are constantly smoking and making it hard for
ventilation
that.
is important, and it doesn't get thought about enough, but like it really is. Like my allergies are so bad, and like not being able to breathe really just fucks everything else up for you.
Yeah. I mean, like if I had an exercise bike and a place where I could breathe, I'd be.
This seems like after party conversation.
You're right. You're right.
Final thoughts, guys. Let's go.
Yeah, because I was all ready to plug the one for Mark, and as for those of you who like everything everywhere all at once, but you think it needs a little more Puddle of Mud and some Mark. But I think
nobody has ever thought that.
No.
You know what? In respect to Carl King, okay, I do a show on.
It's a good show.
Cinema Tonight, and it's on at 1 o'clock on Saturday afternoons at riverwestradio.com. Cinema Tonight. So it's Carl. Thank you for because like I say, I think the most important thing, it's like brick building. You build your own life, and all of this artificial bullshit amounts to nothing unless, of course, you can monetize it or push your own narrative forward. But wholeheartedly, yeah, thank you, Carl. Cinema Tonight is at riverwestradio.com. Thank you, sir.
I mean, this show isn't really exact, like it's not monetized right now, really. I mean, we have a Patreon, but like it's mostly just about hanging out and having like fun and like talking about movies. Like it's not
that's perfect. Anything that's spiritual and happy, all of that is good. But always to take crazy stuff seriously, it's like, well, okay, as long as everybody's having fun, man, then it's a great thing, man. And but everybody's got to be different, and everybody's got to do their own thing, and that's what that's it's just an amazing thing to be alive, man.
It is. I agree with that. Mark, I
Are
want
we
to hear
still in
some.
the still in the plugs? No, we're not still in the
No,
plugs.
I want to hear some. I want to hear some final thoughts. I want to hear your last couple thoughts on this. On this movie.
So this cacophony of craziness has allowed us to elude some main points here about Deliverance. One of the most fantastic scenes. One of the things cinematically that is just extraordinary, actually, about Deliverance. There's a scene when Bobby, they're at the shoreline, they're done canoeing for the day, and Bobby is extremely enthusiastic, and he's expressing this. He's expressing this transformation, of his spirit from being very apprehensive to really getting an energy and a kick out of the river. And as he, for the very first time in his life, is expressing this newfound enthusiasm, the camera is slowly zooming into him, at the same time cross-cutting slowly into Burt Reynolds, as Burt Reynolds, by rote, is doing his his performative piece about the survival or whatever he's doing. And as each person continues overlapping each other and keeps cross-cutting psychologically and technically, Burt Reynolds' character of Lewis Medlock wins as the camera then rests on him, and his indestructible urge, indefatigable urge to get his way in his ideology across.
Yeah, that's it's kind of it's powerful, and he kind of just from the very beginning of it, right? You kind of have that with the dialogue at the first, like you kind of know who at least he is from the very beginning of it.
But do you see the concurrency of not only of psychology, but of the technical interpretation of that psychology as they zoom closer into each character?
Yeah.
Off-cutting, meaning they're each vying for that collective psychological space until the camera ultimately holds on Lewis Medlock, thereby winning that psychological showdown, unwitting psychological showdown.
Yeah.
And maybe this is better for the coda because it seems to put everybody in a very serious state.
Yeah, no, I agree.
The jokes are over, I guess.
No, don't worry. Andy will take us off topic.
And then the second thing, one of the more beautiful realms of filmdom is when they go to that kind of like hotel where you also like a kind of like a bed and breakfast almost back in the day. And they've just been through this traumatic thing in a world that is not theirs, and they're gently get drawn into that dinner. And somebody may say, "I think the corn is going to be good this year," and that incites everyone to start small talk, which builds up into a robust banter, and our guys become part of that world and re-embraced into the world.
Yeah, and it almost feels like filling up the dam, right? Like his eyes at first, like he's crying at the table, and then like it's almost like the conversation itself is almost like water, like once the water starts filling up, everything kind of starts going.
And let me say this is a coda to all of that. So when you guys talk about the difference between the film and the screenplay, you know how the film ends, correct? You ain't gonna believe this. In the screenplay, it ends with one of the guys' kids water skiing on the lake. That's the last shot.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that could have been really interesting.
Screenplay is.
Yeah.
It's a different vibe.
Yeah.
And you know what I want to point out? One other thing that I learned throughout the years is kind of like not the containment of energy, but the parsing out of energy, because a lot of people can come on real strong during a show and then they kind of just like fade out, like they're almost suddenly get depressed and so forth, or they tire out. And what I learned was to pace one's psychological self for the duration of an event like this.
And just let your light fade out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like distance running. It's distance running instead of sprinting, right? So
yeah. So and that's something character-wise to be proud of. Like you said, a sprinter, that they have to pace themselves. And also some people, they realize, dude, you have to pace yourself. You can't just be like this flaming light at the beginning and then fade out into oblivion during. I mean, obviously the joke is a running joke as my light fades here, but you know what I'm saying.
Sure, it plays more for the visual effect rather than the podcast. But yeah, Mark's light. For the podcast listeners, Mark's light has dimmed in the course of the film. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't give a damn because you guys are all lit, so everybody can see 4 lit people, and then they can see 1 unlit person, right?
Well,
no
I'm about to
lose sleep tonight.
I'm about to get lit in the after party. Yeah, honestly, we both made that joke.
Different kind of lit. Yeah.
I have to work tomorrow.
Yeah, that sucks. That's tough. Do you have any final thoughts that aren't about work, Kristina?
I watched this movie for the podcast, obviously, because I never really heard this film until I was like, okay, a movie with John Boorman, Burt Reynolds, and Betty. I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting. And it was. It literally was giving me Lord of the Fly vibes, but for like adults.
Did you have any frame of reference before?
No.
You
really?
Did your mom come in and be part of this?
No, she's been living with my Uma, Annie. She's been out and about. Like she doesn't have time to watch movies that I'm watching now.
Well, that's a serious question because I think it's interesting that I feel like it's so culturally ubiquitous, but I almost feel like a lot of people haven't really seen it or seen it in totality. So
I hadn't seen it. I hadn't seen it until I watched it for this, but I've word for word have like seen other things reference the like. I knew that there was a movie called Deliverance that had that scene. I didn't know anything else.
Yeah, but out of 10 out of 10 canoes.
Metal ones, I hope. Yeah.
10 out of 10 oars, and you got to hold on to your paddles. Yeah, Conan.
Yep. So, I mentioned earlier that I think it's bonkers how it's not even practical effects or stunts. Like it's honest to goodness, real danger personified on the screen with 4 leading men.
We used to have leading men things like climb rocks.
Well, no, but I'm being serious here.
Yeah, now we have Tom Cruise climbing rocks, though.
But it's pretty much unreal in its realness because people don't do this anymore. People don't shoot movies like that anymore. You certainly don't do so without insurance and like have a line in a character saying that he doesn't believe in insurance either. It's uniquely of its time that way because it's this is 71, right? And I think that's absolutely makes for some stunning scene work and composition and this is a really interesting, beautiful film in the cinematography work and in the directorial work that I think gets lost with the shock value of like the one scene, right? And I still say that Banjo Plane Kid has to be an all-timer for like Creepy Harbinger as well, and that's something that like I never really thought about before until we basically analyzed everything in the Murder Night Extravaganza series that we did in October. But the plot is so simple. Like these city dwellers want to take a trip down the river before it's turned into a lake. Hijinks ensue.
Yeah.
And I think, I mentioned before that I think the scene is designed to make the men in the audience think about sexual assault. And I think that was very effective in that way, to the point that it's almost like a cultural touchstone. I don't think it's the most important thing about the movie, but I think it's certainly a jarring scene. And it's something that, has endured for a reason. I think that this has got a deserved place as a cinema classic. And I'm glad to have watched it, I guess, a little more analytically, but as an adult, rather than just like, hey, check out this. I mean, I saw it as almost like, what I used to characterize it as when you get showed a Faces of Death video or something, which is just like, oh, check this crazy thing out. I was like, whoa, and like I saw it too young. So I was like, that's not real, is it? Like, no, it's just a movie. I'm like, oh, okay. But, to watch it, with an interest in film, one thing I will say, great movie poster for a scene that never happens anywhere in the movie. Where there's like the shotgun, like in the water, like taking a beat on them. It's such an evocative image. Nowhere in the movie.
Yeah.
But it is an evocative image.
Well, the guy does have a shotgun, but you never see him.
He does have a shotgun. And they are on the water, but like it's such a like you could do a whole show on iconic images that do not appear in the film, right? And that would be like one of them. But yeah, I like I said, cinema classic. I enjoyed it, enjoyed watching it, I've enjoyed discussing it. So win-win-win.
All right, Andy.
Well, since Conan stole my thoughts about the poster, I'm just going to mention that.
Sorry.
No worries, no worries.
No, you got to mention the music. And
yeah, no,
I didn't. So go ahead. Yeah,
I think we kind of did talk about the music.
I know.
It really is fantastic, the music. But no, the one thing I love about this movie, I actually have seen it before as an adult. I didn't watch it as a kid. I don't remember being on Georgia television. I don't know why, but.
Chamber of Commerce.
It's great. It's it's great tourism.
Only the first half of the film.
It's really
it's a short film.
Oh, the cable feed went out. Oh man, I guess we can't finish Deliverance, but great first half, right?
Yeah, no. But the thing I love about this, it's like a Tales from the Crypt comic, like that's this beautiful 6 pages, like expanded out wonderfully into to the perfectly cut film. I mean, it's the pacing is wonderful. And the only difference between like this and a Tales from the Crypt comic is at the end, everybody who died in the movie would have come back as a zombie and dragged off, the other guys, and leaving Burt Reynolds alone in the hospital.
And then they never got to finish that lake. They never got to like, oh no. Oh, one thing in this movie that was really jarring to me is when they're bringing everything out of the town and they take the church and they're like, oh, we gotta wait for the church to pass.
We gotta wait for the church to get out of the way. Yeah, that's such a wild scene. Like what?
Which I actually remember as a kid in Georgia seeing churches being moved like that. So it's not that uncommon, at least in the 80s.
Well, out here I've never seen it.
Well, you're up in upstate New York, Laura.
I know.
They don't do things like that like we do in the South.
No, they would just keep the church there and
they just flood the church. Y'all don't respect God,
and not with donations. But all right, Andy, is that it for the
pretty much?
All right, well, we're gonna go to the after party in about 10 minutes, 15, whatever you guys want to do. But in a little bit, we're gonna go to the after party. My final thought on this movie is, hang on to your paddle, and if we hit any rocks, don't hit them with your head.